Do you think he's a cult leader? Do you think Destiny, do you think Stephen Bonnell is a cult leader?
He pays me way too much money to besmirch him like that, Paul.
Jared Leto pays me a good amount too.
No, he, I think as far as a person who manages their fan base goes, I think he does a pretty good job because he does a really good job at moderating his subreddit, kicking people off that are being really shitty to people. He's done good at pushing back against far left and far right people that will find his community because he doesn't want those kinds of people in it. And I think he does a good job at moderating.
Do you think he talks about his personal drama and personal life too much in an unhealthy, negative psychological way?
I think that a lot of his channel has turned into drama. So it used to be more politics centered, and he used to do a lot of research streams. And then there for about 2 years, it got pretty drama heavy. But now he's getting back into research streams, which I find cool.
Do you think there is value in the drama content?
I think drama, I used to be super against like shows like The Bachelor and dramatic shit like that. But I've come to appreciate it because I think that whenever you watch drama parasocially, it trains you of how to handle things in your real life. So it's entertaining, but also you're problem solving and playing out possible situations before they might happen to you. So you're better prepared with a toolkit. So in a way, I think it can be helpful.
I've said something similar where it's like, if you watch two deeply mentally ill sociopathic narcissists like have a falling out over the period of 6 months, no names mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
There is actual useful information that could be derived from that, right? It's like Batman and the Joker.
Absolutely.
That is not going to provide you with very much real life utility. But if you watch like, oh, these are actually how people who are very highly intelligent, but also questionable in their morals, let's say, mm-hmm. This is how they act. I believe that provides useful information that you can then take in your personal life.
Yeah, I mean, any drama, because there's a finite set of things that humans can have conflicts over, right? So eventually you see enough of it, you learn the patterns, and whenever it comes to your personal life, you're probably more likely to be able to handle it without having to fall on your face as hard. So
I agree. There's also this general attitude of, oh my God, you're paying attention to all this weird like parasocial drama and all that shit. It's like, well, first off, that's how human beings are. We're evolutionarily wired to appreciate gossip.
Yes, we are.
Right? Yes, Jordan B. Peterson, you studied that a good amount. Like you and Netanyahu, bedfellows. I apologize to Mossad. Sorry about that. We'll cut that out. Or will we? We're evolutionarily wired to appreciate gossip. And there is something like, people, you watch reality TV. Oh, you're contemptible. That's beneath me. It's like, well, I watch documentaries on chimpanzees, in the jungle, and it's like at least Jersey Shore. It's even more sophisticated than that because they're smarter chimpanzees, basically. Right. So there's educational value there, and also the fact that this is a pragmatist point. The fact that so many people like it is evidence that there is something of value there. Otherwise, so many people wouldn't like it. And people say, well, they're all just dumb. It's like, well, I don't believe that. Because first off, there's plenty of intelligent people who love trashy reality TV and who follow like Destiny drama or whatever.
Of course.
And I have friends who do the same thing with like Barstool. Like they're like, oh, who are these characters online, these political figures? They don't know anything about it. And then it's like, they're talking about how Big Cat stabbed Portnoy in the back because he sold half the company or whatever this is, right? So it's like everyone just attaches to whatever, whatever local celebrities in their world are, and then just follow from there.
Totally.
It has implications.
Yeah, we have different circles, but everybody wants to watch drama of famous people unfold for some reason. We love doing it. And so whether it's like makeup YouTubers or political YouTubers. Now, I think a problem can come in whenever that becomes a substitute for real politics, which I think for some people that happens. Like they get so caught up in that drama that they think that they're still watching politics. But if they actually take a step back, they're like, well, this person hasn't actually talked about policy in about 3 months. It's just been drama with like this person, this person,
Yeah, but you know what?
So,
is that not an accurate reflection of how politics is actually done, though?
There's certainly a lot of that in politics.
My boy, William James, my absolute fucking boy, talked about philosophical temperaments in that philosophical and political differences are actually a function of personality differences.
Sure.
And so when you have conservative-minded people and progressive-minded people bitching at each other, I would say that actually does somewhat inform you about the nature of our political discourse in a way that policy differences don't. Because it's speaking to the more primal level that most people actually operate on.
Yeah, it speaks to the more tribalistic emotional level. That's not about policy, but it's about people and groups.
Right. So aren't you still learning about something from politics without discussing policy?
Yeah, I mean, you need both. You can't just have a dry conversation about policy forever and never touch social issues or people's temperamental differences. But I would just say that I think there is an overemphasis on that stuff as opposed to policy. Like a lot of what passes as politics is just a lot of menial culture war nonsense that is just beaten to death. And I would like to see more policy in the space. But they're both important. They just have their time and place. You look like such a cop. I can't get past this vibe that you have going on.
Imagine you were sitting where I am looking at you. Fucking.
This is just what I look like.
Yeah. Someone other than Jordan Peterson, I don't know. Gandalf the short beard.
I have no idea who that is.
This is fair. Listen. Nobody loves Jews more than I do. Okay.
Except for me.
Except for you.
Except for me. Okay.
Except for you, Jordan. But we're not going to talk about Israel tonight, unfortunately. Well, let's see. I have a number of topics, but there was something that came to mind at the end of, we were just talking about drama and parasocial. So is Destiny a cult leader? Yes or no?
As the hat says on the merch, not a cult. Not a cult. So
does he sell hats that say that?
Yeah. There is one hat that says not, or it looks like a shirt or something that says not a cult.
I do think the cult of personality insult is very easily thrown around. You could very easily say that any charismatic figure is
most of them do a little bit.
You could say Martin Luther King had a cult of personality. It's like, okay, well,
to some degree, there's always going to be idol worship of people who were charismatic.
As a former Jordan Peterson fan, I'm sympathetic to the accusations of occultism.
Absolutely. But yeah, if you want to go with a question, and then I got one for you. That.
Great. There was
we can throw back and forth.
Cult. Oh, Destiny versus Glenn Greenwald.
Okay.
What'd you think of that?
I enjoyed it. I think that
was January 6th an insurrection?
I think it was an attempted insurrection. I don't think that it was successful. And I don't think that everybody there was there to do an insurrection.
You know, my favorite part of that debate was when Destiny accused Glenn Greenwald of being a partisan.
So I might have missed that part. I watched about 45 minutes of it. So if there was more, I might have not seen that.
I might have a more parasocial relationship with both of those figures than you do then. Destiny at one point called Glenn Greenwald a partisan. How do you feel about that as a Destiny fan? Do you think that might have been a little bit of projection on Destiny's part?
I don't know enough about Greenwald's other stuff to say. But
you do know enough about Destiny.
Yeah, I don't think that Destiny is a particularly partisan person. I don't.
You don't think so?
No, I don't.
What percent of his audience do you think would vote for Trump? Like his fan base?
Probably very, very little, but that doesn't make him like a partisan blinded person.
When you say all conservatives are artards, would that be more or less partisan?
I had a conversation with John about this on Twitter the other day. And what I said about that was that I think ideally in a perfect world, nobody would ever insult the opposition at all. And we would just have infinite patience and have conversations forever. But at a certain point, people do get burned out. You have enough conversations with bad faith, frustrating, or just stupid people. And you get kind of burned out, you get kind of frustrated, and then you get more adversarial. And so I've seen that happen with Kyle Kalinske, with Destiny to some extent. These people start off pretty patient, but they have enough conversations where they just start calling people artards. And is that rhetorically effective? No. But is it
an indication of their incompetence? Yes. This is precisely the issue with Jordan Peterson. All these woke leftists and blah, 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 blah. I mean, there are woke leftists, but as soon as you say all conservatives are artards, you lose a lot of credibility. Now, Destiny is still, of course, an enlightened centrist. And I've said this before.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, the whole exchange is, if Destiny is the type of guy to stop otherwise progressive people from supporting extreme far left policies, then it's a fair cost for the conservative side to say, hey, you have to let this blue haired guy call you artards on stream while he plays video games for 12 hours. That's a fair exchange, right? If that stops progressives from going too far left, which I think Destiny stops progressives from going too far left, then that's a fair exchange as far as I'm concerned. So Destiny is enlightened centrist. But I do think anyone who says that half of the country are artards is a walking meme.
I mean, obviously,
right? And listen, as someone,
it was hyperbolic, I think, but
I don't think so. I think if you pressed him on it, they actually pressed him on that. Right. And he was like, no, I think they're actually.
But also watch the context in which he said it. He was trying to speak very frank, and he was venting. And so in that context, I think it's a little bit different. That's not his official public position. And if you pushed him on it,
he just said it publicly.
He did, but he was venting because it was he's dealt with a lot of pretty art-hearted conservatives who are totally like. And I would say the Trump Kool-Aid.
Fair enough. And I would say it is absolutely a sign of your incompetence if your interactions with a minority of let's say 50% of the country, then you think justifies yourself saying all 50% are retarded.
No, I don't think that.
That's exactly what he did.
I don't think that. Well, I mean,
listen, nobody loves
I think
DGG.
Ideally, he shouldn't have said it.
Nobody loves DGG more than I do.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. No, I mean, I think ideally nobody would say things like that. But I think he was being hyperbolic. He doesn't mean that every single conservative is an artard. Just, I don't know, maybe like a third to a half of them.
Would you like to ask me a question, or would you like to hear another question from me?
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about your logical consistency position. I want to, because I watched your video about Ian McGilchrist, if that's how you say his name. Are you, when you say, because I want to understand your position more first.
Please. Before
I tear it apart. What do you mean whenever you say that you're okay with logical inconsistency? In all instances, or just sometimes it's okay?
I mean, I am capable of determining whether or not an individual is funny, despite not having a defined definition of funny. I'm capable of determining what is good music versus bad music by my standard.
Yes.
Without a definition of, I would say an objective standard.
Okay, we'll talk about that too.
I can determine what is music and what is just a cacophonous random amount of sound that has nothing approximating the qualities of music. Even though I have no definition of music, I'm capable of determining that.
Sure.
That's what I mean by I'm comfortable with inconsistency. Well,
that's not inconsistent to me.
Yeah, it is because, it's inconsistent behaviorally because you say, this is X, define X. Well, I can't. Well, how do you know it's X? I just do. Okay, but then how do you arrive at that?
Okay. I don't think that's inconsistency. I wouldn't use that word because I think that's just you using a mental heuristic you can't fully articulate verbally knowledge sometimes, but you can still know things and have intuitions about things and be exploring and trying to work through complex ideas before you can fully articulate them down to like the pixel of detail that words can provide. That's not inconsistent to me. That's just part and parcel of how language and cognition works.
Okay. Well, then thank you. Then you agree with my position and everything I say.
I do agree with...
What a weak criticism.
I do agree with your conclusion, but I think that the way that you word it is terrible. And I think that your in that video, I think your arguments that attempted to justify your conclusion had nothing to do with the conclusion. Because whenever I think of inconsistency, I think of like a person applying a double standard and like, say if I were to be an even more, a bigger Biden shill than I am, and I were to say, Paul, I would never vote for Donald Trump because he has problems with foreign corruption. And I would never vote for a president that ever had foreign corruption problems, ever. And that's why I hate Trump. You would come back and say, but Roenn, what about the Burisma Ukraine stuff? And then what if I said, well, whatever, I don't care. So then you're like, well, so it's fine whenever Biden does, but not whenever Trump does. And I'm like, yeah, fuck you. That's inconsistency because I'm applying a double standard and that's not fair. And that would frustrate you, right? So you would call me out for being inconsistent.
It depends on how much I thought that you were intelligent. If I didn't think you were very intelligent to begin with and you said that, I'd go, that's about what I would expect is...
Yeah, but it would still, if you were trying to take a conversation seriously with somebody, that would still bother you. Like you would call them out.
Depends on how...
And say
depends on how much I regard them as mentally competent.
Sure. But if you were invested in the conversation...
And not even mentally competent, that's a terrible, very arrogant way of saying that. How much they've thought about that particular domain of life. politics.
Let's say you're talking to somebody that you do think that about. You would say that their inconsistency is a problem, but having a double standard that it's like, it's fine for me, but it's not fine for you. That's not okay, right? You would take issue with that.
In that regard, but let's say I'm talking to someone who is a complete loser. If they are acting like a loser and I say, you're a loser, and then they go, well, you're a loser, I would go, well, but you actually are a loser. And they'll go, well, I said you're actually a loser. It's like, yes, but those words are just tips of the iceberg underneath the actual reality of like, is someone acting like a total dweeb and is the other person just dominating them? You know what I mean?
No, I don't. I'm not following.
Of course not. This is where what's his good face would say beta.
That's very inconsistent of you, Paul. We were talking about consistency, and now you're talking about.
Well, what I'm saying is, it is a valid rhetorical / epistemic move to at some point in a conversation say, you know what, you're a fucking loser.
Sure, if the person is actually being just a bad faith idiot.
Correct.
Yes.
And whether or not they're actually being a bad faith idiot is not a function of propositional, we can put words to this. It's like, it's in their behavior, it's in their body language, it's in how they dress, it's in their choice of wig.
I think it is a function of you can logically make arguments of how people are being bad faith. I mean,
I don't know.
Can you point out where they're like doing logical fallacies?
Well,
I think you can.
If I say to someone, the vibes of the conversation are off, it's kind of hard to go much more detail than that.
Well, that's something that
unless you're truly autistic.
That's something that
I'm sure we both are. You can say like, well, he looked at me and he like, I said this word, and then he like, looked around real quick, and then he made this weird reference.
And then he hissed at me.
Yeah.
And then he put on these dorky ass sunglasses.
Yeah. And then he went. Brr.
Yeah.
No, I think you can be pretty confident. But there are more subtle things that define a lot.
Well, but so that's you starting by saying the vibes were weird. But if you had more time to articulate, well, what about the vibe was weird? Given some time to reflect, you would be able to come up with an articulation of what about it.
It would be
weird.
very, very difficult.
I mean,
sometimes impossible.
I do that all the time with people. Like,
it's because you have an IQ of 197.
I'm like, I'll think like, what about that was strange? And the reason we do that is because we want to abstract out of specific interactions the patterns that have significance to us so that we can notice that pattern later. And we do that all the time, whether it's conscious or not. So it's fine for things to start off as inarticulated, but then you process them and they become articulated over time, as a certain Canadian psychologist likes to say.
That's true.
So my whole point was just that
you said it's a terrible way of, you said the way that I talk about it.
Yeah, I think that saying you're okay with logical inconsistency is not the best way to word that, because it's what that sounds like is that you're okay with people violating, like saying a principle and then immediately breaking it and not caring that they just broke a principle, or that they're being contradictory and they're like leaning into it and they're not trying to fix their contradiction. That I think is bad. Because if people are willing to be contradictory and inconsistent and not play fair, we can't coexist. We can't trust each other if we're not willing to apply the same standard to each other and be fair in conversations and in politics.
I would say this is a cynical perspective, but perhaps true. There's a level of charisma that is associated with brute forcing yourself through inconsistencies that no other man would get away with. Are you pouring?
I'm pouring some sweet tea.
Some Christopher Hitchens' favorite
sweet tea.
What is it called? Johnny Walker White.
It's called Wani Jocker. Yeah, White. That's what it's called.
I love the taste of not getting demonetized on YouTube.
Me too. Sweet tea, everybody.
The fact. Well, I don't want to go down this tangent. Here's what I'll say. My YouTube channel is bigger than yours, so therefore I'm more successful. And
you've had 3 years in this game, Paul. I'm 1 year into it. I'm 6/10 of the way to you.
Therefore, 3/5.
Yeah.
Let's reduce our fractions here. This is why you're still at 6,000.
You got me. You got me there.
Listen, when you get to 10,000, you'll start reducing your fractions. Okay.
Hitchens.
I get your point. Your point. Look, I'm well aware there's a cost to the way that I behave.
Mm-hmm.
I've been aware of that my whole life. So yeah, and look, like autistic people. No, listen, nobody loves autistic people more than I do. Okay, a lot of them have trouble with me because they can't tell when I'm joking, which is not there are a lot of people I really dislike precisely because I think they retreat into humor when it is convenient for them. And I did not like them for a long time. Jon Stewart, Steven Crowder, John Oliver. I think a lot of these people did that. And for the long time, I was like, these guys suck. I hate them. I'm going to be the opposite of that. And then I realized that is the source of their power.
Then you gaze too long into the abyss.
I gaze too long in the abyss.
Far too long.
Yes, but only a monster can slay the monster.
Sure. I think
Go ahead.
the 2 points. One is a matter of people who have charisma, being able to just power through sophistry. I think that Hitch himself was a great example of that. Great guy. Definitely had a couple issues in his arguments occasionally. He even admitted that if he can do a cheap trick to score optical points, he would.
That's epic.
So that does work, and we love him for it.
Right there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the other point is escaping me now, but I had one, and now it's gone.
That's fair.
So,
well, none of them have been good so far, so we can move on to my question.
let's do it.
There's a movement called the Red Pill
Yes.
that claims that our culture is degenerate and weak.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
I mean,
Do you think men nowadays, as a generalization, do you think there's a lot of men, a disproportionately large amount of men, who are degenerate and weak?
no, I don't think so.
I think so.
I don't think that's a particular issue.
What do you think of OnlyFans?
I did know that this was fresh and fit. Where are the girls, Paul? There's no girls in here. This is
Listen,
me and you. And,
Tonight's the boys. Tonight's for the boys.
and my
What do you think
sister.
of OnlyFans and its relationship to society and what it says about who we are as a culture?
That's still something that I don't have a super strong opinion on. My gut says that there is probably something that is not great about the, I don't know, to use your sexuality and commodify it on some level, to me, feels intuitively wrong. Like, I wouldn't be comfortable dating a person who did that. I wouldn't want to do that myself. There are a lot of costs to people, to your children. Like there's been cases of like people in like middle schools and high schools that some kid's mom has an OnlyFans.
That's entirely a result of society shaming those people.
It certainly might be. But
It certainly might be.
I intuitively am not a huge fan. But I don't know. I don't think it's some like destruction of of the West, like a lot of people say that it is. I don't know. Not too strong either way.
I think that the best way to destroy your enemies is to rob them of the few good points that they make. And I think the red pillars do, among the many foolish things they say, which is endless. One of the few good points they make is that I do think our culture is degenerating. We are over materializing. We are commodifying. We are monetizing human intimacy through something like OnlyFans.
Sure. In some ways we're degenerating. Not in others.
Sure, but for example, in that regard, I do think that it's the old phrase. What is it? Strong men make good times make weak men, blah blah blah, all that stuff, right? It feels like I see this in myself. I would be if the power grid went out tomorrow, I would be useless. I would be dead in a month. I know I have no handy skills. I can't hunt. I can't do any, and that sounds like, oh, hunting is a specific thing. It wasn't that long ago where almost everyone had like a shotgun in their home and went hunting if you didn't live in the middle of the city.
Sure.
And it's like, haha, well, that's so ridiculous. It's like, well, wait till the power goes out.
It's good to have if shit hits the fan. You need to learn how to do that kind of survival stuff.
And I do think that a lot of the problems that we complain about and talk about are a function of just not having real problems. And I think our culture is degenerating in that regard.
I agree.
We've been given too much. I
agree in some ways. I think so. So men have obviously lost a lot of technical skills in terms of being like handyman people. And in other ways, I think that men have learned how to break certain traditional gender roles that have been harmful to them in the past, and in some ways are doing a lot better now. There is more of an emphasis on mental health. There's more of an emphasis on trying to be in touch with your experience and your emotions, which if men don't do that, tends to manifest in violence towards others or themselves. And the data is very solid on that. And it totally fucks men over if you don't teach them that it's okay to process and express those things. So in that aspect, we've made, leaps and bounds of progress in the past.
As someone who was in
20
therapy,
years.
as someone who was in therapy for 9 months, I'm more than sympathetic to that perspective.
Yeah.
I do think we swung too far.
In
I
what
think
if you want to talk about like the general effect of technology on humans,
yeah, we're
broadly,
weak as fuck.
I would agree that there are problems, but that's not a man specific thing. That's just a people having too much comfort and staring at screens all day.
That's fair. Sure.
You know.
Listen, women are just as degenerate as men nowadays. That's fine. But like, for example, one of the fundamental problems in society is lack of family.
Sure.
Children are being raised out of wedlock. If children are being had, we're under replacement rate, which is a problem. And, a lot of that is because, men aren't dating. They're inside playing video games, watching porn. That simply wasn't available 15, 20 years ago.
Absolutely. That's a problem.
And it's a big problem, I would say. And it's a deeper problem than I would have thought like 6 months ago or a year ago. I was like, okay, the biggest problems are China and Iran, or whatever, a cyber attack and all that shit, which is still real. But like, I'm now under the belief of like, we are literally on our way to just slow societal collapse unless there is a spiritual revolution of some kind. And I think the red pillars are hobbling their way towards that conclusion. And then they go to like, the solution is Islam with Andrew Tate, which is like, that's a joke. Or the solution is whatever the fuck.
Hyper tradcon, like women in the kitchen kind of thing.
That or whatever Fresh and Fit and Royo Tomasi are.
I will say, I mean, there are obviously valid points and grains of truth in every philosophy. So they are getting at some kind of fundamental problem that we have. I just think that they misdiagnose it and their solutions are dog shit.
But you can give credit to them for saying, yeah, you know what, we are kind of degenerate and weak nowadays.
I would lean away from those terms, but I would just say that I think that technology, I think the human brain has no idea how to interface with technology or the internet, and I think it saps our attention through dopamine overload in ways that it happens so rapidly. We didn't have the internet 30 years ago. We didn't have cell phones 25 years ago. I mean, it's happening so fast that it's fucking our brains, and we're getting much higher rates of depression, anxiety, people not going out in real life, people getting laid less than literally ever in American history in the past 100 years that we've like tracked that kind of shit. So there are huge problems with the internet.
Right, which sounds like a funny...
People have to go touch grass.
Yeah, and it sounds like a funny statistic, like, oh, people aren't getting laid. It's like, well, that means not having relationships.
Yeah.
They're not getting married.
It's everything.
They're not, no one can afford homes for other reasons, which I would agree with you on your economic left-wing bullshit. And then it's like, okay, well, guess what? I see this with myself. I live in a commercial apartment complex. I don't know any of my fucking neighbors.
Yeah, me neither.
And it's like, I'm not part of a community.
It's sad.
So I have no stake then in the school board. I have no stake in who's mayor because I'm not going to live here a year from now or something like that. And it's like, and I get, this is, I guess, my perspective, but like, okay, I would prefer not to buy a property until I'm in a relationship with someone. I'm like, okay, this is my long-term partner. We'll do this together. I've got that set out or whatnot. And when people got married when they were like 22 and 23, all that shit, it's like, that caused all kinds of problems, which is good that we don't have now. But there was a whole set of other problems that were solved by that. It's like, okay, but by 28, you were in the home that you were likely going to be in for some period of time, and you were involved in the community. And now we have to find, community online and shit. And that is a terrible substitute for like the stuff that actually happens in your own community. Because all the real problems, I don't want to say it's not real problems to be like depressed and shit online and stuff, but like homelessness and all the problems that we sit here and complain about online, well, that happens in our actual locale.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. How do you sit there and justify complaining on the internet about, conservatives, economic policy is this, that, it causes these problems, it leads to income inequality, it leads to homelessness, whatever. How do you sit there and complain online about all these problems without actually doing something about it in your own life?
I would say that my priority is to ensure that, I mean, first and foremost, that my well-being is taken care of, and then I also make life better for other people. And I would like one day to do that on a broader scale, which is why I'm trying to build a platform and eventually channel it into other things. But I would say in my personal life, I try to be a good listener to my friends and family and my partner. And
I'll feed your homeless neighbor.
Yes. And
I didn't give him any food, but I listened to him.
I try to help people in those ways. I have some clients that I help out. I talk to, like peer counseling, therapy stuff. So I don't know. Certainly I could be doing more. We all could. But
do you know what projection is?
What? Well, yes, I do, Paul. What,
okay.
What
because
about
that question that I just asked you was 100% a function of projection. Because I constantly ask myself, how the fuck can I go on here and complain about, you know, autists poisoning our discourse, which, you know, and then in turn causes problems of like, okay, well then this clogs up our political system, and this leads to homelessness, this leads to wealth inequality, all this stuff, and then I don't actually go out and do anything about it.
Sure. I mean, you're building towards something like that.
That's true, but like,
you know,
there's an element of, for every 10 hours I spend online, I feel like I owe at least 1 hour of like at the soup kitchen or some shit like that.
Sure, and that's a good thought to have. But I would say also just as long as you're a good person in your personal life and the people's lives that you do touch,
I'm not a good person.
They are better off as a result of having you in their life. I think that is, you have fulfilled your moral obligation.
I am not a good person.
And beyond that is just extra.
I'm not a good person.
Okay.
I'm a bad person who tries to do good things. Big difference.
I guess we all are in some sense.
Okay, when are we going to take our political activism into the next level then?
Well, so I would
I brought you here.
I would like to build up a bigger subscriber count. I would like to integrate.
You have too many Destiny fans in your audience. You need to purge your ranks.
Hey, the DGG people came out in droves to canvass for Ossoff and Warnock in Georgia 2020.
That's true.
Runoff. That's a cool thing that Destiny has done, is to mobilize people to come do that. And ironically, Vosh does not like Destiny, but Destiny inspired Vosh to also do IRL canvassing with his fan base. He was the first streamer to like start doing that kind of stuff en masse, and now like they're all doing it, but they don't give him credit for it.
Yeah, and which
is cool.
Do respect that to a great deal. And the blue sky vision in my mind is, let's do that except for non-partisan bullshit of like, you know, a particular Democrats or Republicans. It's like, well, why don't we do ranked choice voting or something like that? Stuff that everyone agrees on. Right? For
sure. Unless you're the Texas Republican Party.
Unless you're the Texas GOP.
So it is still partisan, unfortunately.
That's a problem.
I would like to talk more a little bit about the red pill.
Go ahead.
If we can.
Please.
I wanted to just kind of give my kind of critique here of that broad movement and my time in it, and then get your thoughts on it as well. Because I was in the red pill for a couple years. And then I moved on because it is just insane, autistic bullshit. And I become so much happier as a result of not being in it anymore. And the core of, I think what the red pill tries to sell men is that, on one hand, they tell them that like women don't really matter, fuck them, don't care what they think. But then also all the advice on the red pill, at least as far as the subreddit goes, is advice towards how to become more attractive to women, changing everything about yourself to be more attractive.
How to appear more attractive to women.
Right. And so it's basically the fundamental message is that in order to be worthy of being loved, you have to wear a facade and pretend to be something that you're not. There's a fundamental message at the core of the red pill. And the guys on there are terribly depressed about it. And if you dig deep enough, I mean, there's just hundreds and hundreds of posts of them being like, I can't take this anymore. This is so sad. It's all blah, blah, blah. They teach you to wear a facade, never open up to a woman, never be vulnerable to a woman, never reveal your emotions or anything real to a woman. It sets up an adversarial dynamic. And it teaches you to just change why would you change everything about yourself to appeal to a person and get the desire of somebody who doesn't have your best interest at heart and who would tell you that, you know, you opened up to me the other day about how you were kind of depressed. That really made me lose respect for you. If a girl ever tells you that, Know what your next words are? Bye-bye, go date somebody else, right? But the red pill says, no, that's just how women are, so you have to pretend to be stoic and never show emotion. And they pretend to care about men, but by doing that, they are destroying men. They are causing more men to kill themselves by encouraging them to never tap into your emotions. Like Sneeko, being like, as a man, you never cry. You never show any emotion. And it's like, well, you're killing more men than
it's almost
other
hard.
Groups are.
It's almost hard to believe. I have to, like, will myself to think about it sometimes of like, you know, and I got lucky in some regard in that the rabbit hole I fell down was the Jordan Peterson rabbit hole in college, which is the opposite of that, right? I mean, he's literally a clinical therapist. So like therapy and emotions and feelings are all central to that. So when I hear like a Fresh and Fit or a Sneeko say like, yeah, don't ever cry, just in general, it's like, there's a big part of me that's like, well, no one, obviously, this is a meme. This is like, it's a
caricature.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. It's so ridiculous that no one could, like, I'm like, there's nobody that actually believes that. There's nobody that walks around believing that, right? But there are. And it's also a generational thing. I mean, I'm 27 now, and I guess there's kids who are like 16, 17, which is like a decade is a decent amount of time. So it is like a different environment, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, that's wild that like that caught on. Like that there are people who will watch Fresh and Fit and believe it all. Yeah. Like I watch Alex Jones every now and then. More so than I'm willing to admit. And I can see it's entertaining. Mm-hmm. Like his debate with Destiny. It's like, okay.
Oh, I couldn't fucking stomach more than
I agree. That wasn't even, I didn't watch
that.
The whole thing either. But what it indicated is to me is like clearly Alex Jones is largely, if not mostly, an entertainer. Right? So in my thought, I'm like, well, the reason people listen to him is because of that.
But they think that they're getting like substantive politics.
Well,
and, like,
sometimes the worst part about Alex Jones is that he's correct about 10% of the time.
Sure, once in a while he bats right.
Yeah, in a very big way. He hits a home run. But and then like the Fresh and Fit stuff, it's like, seriously, man, like,
they're tapping into something that there's a market for, right? Because men feel disenfranchised.
Yeah, they're tapping into the resent, but they're not offering a real solution.
Yeah, they give a worse solution.
I would love
what is on the table.
I would love to. I'll put this out there. I would love to I'd love to interview someone who's like a big Fresh and Fit fan or something like that, or like one of them red pillars, you know. There was a kid who commented on one of my videos who was on a Jubilee episode, and he was like the red pill side, and he was saying all this stuff, and I'd just be curious to ask some questions. But yeah, it's like I said, I am lucky that the rabbit hole I fell down was the Jordan Peterson go to therapy. Yeah.
I was in both
perspective
at the same time somehow, which is a contradiction, kind of, but there's overlap. But I was in both for quite a few years, until I just got tired of it. But yeah, it's telling you to suppress parts of yourself that are ultimately detrimental to your mental health, and living in a facade to be worthy of approval from people that don't give a shit about you and don't have your best interest at heart. It's a dog shit philosophy. I've been so much happier getting out of it and actually just interacting with women in a way that is like authentic and genuine. And I've had way more success after that than I ever did trying to do all the weird red pill shit. So to anybody out there that's still in that, there is room on the other side for growth and for an escape from that, because it is not healthy. It's very, very bad.
I have never touched one. Let's move on. Do you agree with me that everyone is non-binary?
Depending on how you define non-binary, sure. Not everybody fits perfectly into exact rigid gender roles.
Do you think that there is anyone who is perfectly masculine or perfectly feminine, or archetypically masculine or archetypically feminine?
No, if you're going to define the archetype super narrow.
I don't think there's ever been an individual who has ever, I don't think there's ever been a man who completely lacked feminine characteristics. And I don't think there's ever been a woman who completely lacked masculine characteristics. In whatever way you define feminine or masculine.
Yeah.
Assuming they're opposite, you could just switch the words and they'd still be opposite, right? Like, you know, justice versus mercy. You cannot be just and merciful in the same situation by definition, right? If someone commits a crime, to be just is to give them their punishment. Mercy is by definition not subjecting them to that punishment.
Maybe.
There's probably a better example to use there than that because those are specific and I remember those from church camp. But
yeah. Church camp.
Everyone is non-binary because everyone has both masculine and feminine aspects.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to set it up to where masculine and feminine are defined as these rigid boxes and to only be a man or a woman, you have to only have one of those boxes, then everybody is going to check both boxes. I don't like using terms like masculine and feminine normatively. I'm a big, like, I'm not like a gender abolitionist, but I don't believe that gender is like normative. I don't care. I think that gender should be descriptive words about how men and women happen to be. But in terms of like your character being a human, I think that gender has nothing to do with character. And I just don't find those terms very useful at all. Unless you're talking about just like aesthetics and like basic differences, like on average, like men and women are different in height and the IQ bell curve has like a wider like berth at the bottom and stuff like that.
All the dumbest people in the world are men and all the smartest people in the world are men. It's greater variability.
And just I mean, because there's no advice that I would ever give to my son that I wouldn't also give to my daughter in terms of like, you need to learn how to
really.
Well, I mean, aside from some basic shit, like with a girl, you have to be more cautious about going out at night. And
yeah, like how about stuff dating like advice? That's very different for men and women.
I'm talking about like character things, like what you should do for your character. I would give them the same advice.
I would say how judicious you are with your partners is pretty significant to your character. As a woman, you bear way more risk, and as a man,
I mean
you have more physical power in
that's
the situation.
A tactical.
So you have a different responsibility than women do.
That's a tactical. I mean, that's just a choice for your behavior that has to be different based on your physiology. But that's not character. Like I'm talking about like your ability to be assertive versus gentle, or learn to be yielding versus. Stuff like that, like being kind and compassionate versus having tough love. That stuff, we should all have the capacity to be in touch with our full spectrum of emotions and just have the wisdom to know when and where and how to integrate and process those things. So I hate all this shit whenever they're like, men, like as a man, you have to always be dominant. It's like, well, you should have the capacity for dominance, right? It's much like... heaven goes to those who know how to use their swords but are determined to keep them sheathed, I believe.
The meek shall inherit the earth.
Is the quote. Yes.
The meek. What you just said is a different translation according to Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. But yes.
Would you ever use they, them pronouns to refer to one person? They, them. Assuming, I'm not talking about like someone dropped their wallet. I'm like, let's say I tell you, not me, but let's say someone's in here and they're like, my pronouns are they, them.
Mm-hmm.
Would you refer to them as they, them?
Yeah, sure.
What if they said their pronouns were it, its?
There's a level that I think it might get silly at a certain point with certain like neo pronouns that I would say are kind of weird.
Like bugs?
Maybe like bugs. That might. Well, see, here's my question. One might be a little bit strange.
Adolf Hitler. Where do you draw the line? And how do you draw that line?
In the words of, I believe, who was it? Was it Anthony Scalia, or who was it about pornography that was like, I'll know it when I see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that answer. I agree with that.
I'll know it when I see it.
But this is my thing is, I will always, not always, generally I will be polite when the situation calls for it, which is most times. If someone wants to be called a they, them, I will not do it if they're not in the room. I'm not going to like be talking to someone and be like they, them when I know what sex they are. And for the exact same reason that I wouldn't call someone it, its. And I see no fundamental difference other than you draw the line at it, its, and I draw it at they, them. Because people say, well, but it makes them feel better. It's like, well, that's not the only consideration. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Is that not valid too, Dr. Peterson?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's.
All right, you're not progressive enough to argue about this. So that's fine. That's fine.
Territory in neo-pronouns that I think gets a little bit silly. That at a certain point it can start to feel like it is people request that to cover up something else that might be better discussed.
I agree.
But I would just say in general, I would call anybody what they want to be called because it's not a big deal to me, and I would not like make a big deal out of it. But like in my head, privately, I might think it's a little bit silly, but I would still do it, you know? So
Probably. That's fair. Do you agree that democracy is fucking cringe?
if the populace is uneducated, yeah, sure. If you don't have people that are prepared to do critical thinking and are not prepared to interpret propaganda and their brain, I mean, yeah, then a democracy is only as strong as the population is able to critically think. So yeah,
We seem to be lacking that nowadays.
Do
you think that
very black pilled on the general person's ability to parse through propaganda?
Do you think that when people say Trump is a threat to democracy, that's a valid concern?
I do.
I guess I do too, except my thing is like we have this fetish for democracy and freedom here in this country.
Yes, we do.
And I think it's pathetic. First off, what we call democracy, the Electoral College, do we feel that's very democratic? If you get 50.1% of the votes in a state, all the other 49.9, it's as if they were not even cast.
I would
insane.
I would restructure that heavily. I would restructure the Electoral
College.
A
vote in Montana is like literally thousands times more relevant than a vote in California.
I'm super
Texas.
Against that. Your vote shouldn't be worth more or less depending on where you live geographically. It's a fucked up system.
I think that these fundamentalists on MSNBC and CNN who are constantly like, he's a threat, he's an existential threat to democracy. It's like, first off, of course, there is no better system than democracy. I don't know what system you would replace it with. Monarchy? That's a joke.
Right.
Okay. So obviously democracy is the best thing. But this idea that like we need to make sure that as many people can vote as possible and minimize all restrictions under all circumstances. No. The opposite. We should make it harder to vote. Okay, you should have to earn your right to vote. This goes back to our culture being weak and degenerate. It's like, I think this idea that like the day I've talked about this before, and I'm going to make a whole video about it. The day I turn 18, I deserve, without lifting a goddamn fucking finger, I deserve every single right that took thousands of years to get to this point where those rights even exist. It took your relative recent ancestors to fight and die for them. And now you think, the idea that anyone would even make it more difficult for me to vote by like, I don't know, requiring me to complete the same citizenship test that an immigrant has to take, or maybe requiring civil service of some kind, as they do in South Korea and Switzerland and Israel. This fetishism, I think that's an example of weakness. It's like you have lived such an easy life that you are not aware of how thin the ice of civilization is that you skate upon that grants you those rights in the first place. And if you think that you do not have a responsibility to maintain that civilization, to maintain that society, to give back, to sacrifice some of your individuality in service of the collective, you're a degenerate. Tell me why I'm wrong.
There are two wolves inside of me. There's Christopher Hitchens and there's the Pope Francis. And there is part of me that believes what I just said, that I think most people, I'm not sure if most, a good chunk of people do not have the ability to critically think, and their vote is swayed by propaganda and bullshit. And I am very black-pilled on their ability to vote, and I question if that's a good thing. On the other hand, I think that the more that you means test people's ability to vote, you only select for people that are born into circumstances that just have more money and more access to things, and that will make the system worse. And I think that as soon as you turn 18, the first part of me is like, yeah, you're fucking stupid. Should you even be able to vote if you know nothing? But then I'm like, well, you live in the country. The country affects you. All the laws apply to you. You pay taxes. Your taxes go to our military, they go to the roads, the schools. So if you're being taxed by a system and you're affected by that system and you live inside of it, you should have a right to vote to affect and change that system. These two parts of me are in conflict, and I still work through that. But I always lean towards, I think that more democracy is better, because the more I believe you decentralize power as a broad principle, the better that is. That's why we have 3 branches of our government. Some say we have 4. and it's not just one branch or one dictator. The more you spread it out and the more checks and balances that there are, I think the better that is.
I don't know.
I think.
We have a broken fucking immigration system that hasn't been reformed in like 20 or 30 years or more. You know, it's interesting. It's important to conceptualize it this way. If I buy an iPhone, let's say an iPhone 10, which is what I have, and I'm like 10 years out of date or 5 years out of date, whatever I'm at. If I have an iPhone 10 and then I wait 30 years, I still have an iPhone 10. The software that I bought is as good or as bad as it was when I bought it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what our current immigration system is. People don't seem to realize. That's what our current immigration system is. People don't realize this. The immigration system we have now is literally operating by the rules and laws that were set into place like 40 years ago in 1980, some fucking bullshit. And it's like, oh, well, it's been 30 years, so we must have made incremental improvements. It's like, no, not fundamentally. You know, we might do email instead of fax or whatever. But like, it's the same broken system. And this massive country that we live in, I don't know. I'm under the position that we need accelerationism. We need to have a second constitutional convention. All right, all the enlightened centrists need to gather together. All right, Slavoj Žižek, Jordan Peterson, Eric Weinstein, Tristan Harris,
Dave Rubin.
Not Dave Rubin.
Toss him in the mix while you're at it.
Dave Rubin will be
convention of dorks.
No. We need a second constitutional convention.
I would be down for like a workers' bill of rights. I'd be down for that to go back to some New Deal shit. 100%. Bring that into the fold of the enlightened centrist movement. Some better workers' protection.
Nobody loves workers more than I do.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Okay.
Glad to hear it. I don't know shit about immigration. That's not something that I'm qualified to speak on at all.
That's fair.
Never studied it.
There's virtually nothing you're qualified to speak on. That's why I brought you here. All right. You have a question for me?
Do I have questions for you? Let me check my notes. I think I wrote down a couple. I mean, the main things I wanted to talk about was the logical consistency, red pill masculinity. There you go again, Paul, with your clumsiness. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, consistency, red pill, masculinity. There was probably something else. We don't have to go back into the trans kids things. That is something that one day I want us to come back to, but probably not tonight, just because it'll take a while. What else do we have? So do you support unions? You a fan of the concept of unions, collective bargaining? Sure. Okay.
As much as I am corporations. We talked about this last time.
Yeah. So like a balance of we have to have corporations be able to innovate to innovate, but the workers have to be able to bargain together.
What the fuck is your problem with enlightened centrism?
I don't have a problem with it as long as it's if it is truly enlightened and it is the center of both terrible extremes. I think that's fine, but I think that the center of the two extremes is on the left. I would consider myself.
How could that? That's definitionally impossible.
Because I think that the depth and the amount of people on both sides that believe in crazy shit is not exactly equal. And so
you think there's more people on the what we would call the far right than there is the far left?
I don't know numbers on that specifically.
I don't know the numbers either, but
I don't know the numbers.
I have a sense for proportion.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more people on the what we would call the far left.
Do you think so?
Especially who are in positions of power. Yeah. The entire DEI industry, the universities, the media, the legacy media, which to be fair, I don't actually think it's fair to bring up media as an institution that's too far left anymore because nobody fucking cares about the fucking
Well,
CNN,
I mean, they're
MSNBC.
Pretty solid.
Joe Rogan is the most popular.
Yeah,
but Joe Rogan is the most mainstream, if you just go by statistical numbers, figure there is, and he's not far left by any imagination. So I'm not even going to count the media. But the universities, for sure. Corporations and the DEI industrial complex, for sure.
I mean, in terms of the universities.
Activists.
I mean, there's a lot of... I mean, so whenever you talk about the wokesters... Hang on. This is... Sweet tea is going to make me have to burp in a moment. Oh, buddy. Whenever you talk about woke people at universities. To me, there's a reasonable version of that I actually really like, and then there's a crazy version of it that I don't.
Okay, what's the crazy version that you don't like?
The crazy version that I don't like is
that these crazy leftists are literally pro-Hamas. Oh wait,
yeah, that I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of pro-Hamas people.
Right.
I'm not a fan of tankies. I'm not a fan of people that defend people like Stalin or Mao. I'm not a fan of people that say that, you know, anybody who is conservative or capitalist is like fundamentally like evil or something. I don't like people that don't want to have dialogue. They don't believe in discourse because it's a tool of, you know. So that kind of stuff I'm not a fan of. The shouting down everybody is racist and like bigoted with no conversation.
It's almost
that's
like
not good.
we all the people who were like, there's too many far left woke college students. They were not loud enough about it because no one thought that the far left would be pro Hamas, and yet
there's some weird shit.
Inshallah, here we are.
There's some weird shit happening over there for sure. But then there's a lot of really solid stuff on the left too, like just the general belief in the existence of systemic inequality when it comes to race, when it comes
Jordan
to gender.
Peterson believes that. That's not a left wing belief.
Well, he's mentioned it in passing. I wouldn't say that's a focus.
The Gini coefficient being the single best predictor of crime.
I don't know what that is.
Let me educate you, Jordan. I'll get you in touch with the roots of your forefathers.
I'm ready.
The single strongest correlation in all of social science is IQ and like I think grades or something like that.
Sure.
And it's not that strong. The second strongest correlation is wealth inequality and crime. I think male homicide to be particular. And Jordan Peterson in his lectures, this is pre-coma Peterson, based Peterson, goes out of, he doesn't mention it in passing. He literally goes, poverty does not cause, because look, where everyone's poor, there's not much crime.
I know this lecture that you're talking about.
Everywhere where everyone's rich, not much crime. The places where there's poor and rich people, south side of Chicago, where there's just a few miles over, there's giant penthouses. South Africa, I think the worst inequality in the world. Where there is massive inequality, the rates of male homicide are correspondingly high.
Yeah.
And he says, so therefore, poverty does not cause crime. Relative poverty causes crime. Those are not the same thing.
It's funny then.
Therefore, it is not a left-wing belief to say that's a fact, because unless you want to say Jordan Peterson's left-wing, I don't think so.
I think that take that he gave was that is a generally agreed upon leftist critique.
Fair enough. That's
sociology.
That's an enlightened centrist take because that's the left side of enlightened centrism.
If you want to bring that into the fold, I am more than supportive of you wanting to call that centrism. I would like it if that was, but I would say that most people that I ever meet who are center or right of center would say that they don't view that as anything that is meaningful.
Let me ask you a question: How many people have you met that identifies themselves as enlightened centrist?
There's this one guy that I know who wears weird fucking hats. And
did you see my video titled "I'm coming out as a far right reactionary"?
Yes, I did.
I think I'm going to make a video called "I'm coming out as a far left revolutionary."
Please do.
And I will give you all the reasons why are capital gains taxed at a lower rate than income. Why is capital gains not progressive? Why is healthcare not universal? Why do we have this hyper individualist view of everything?
Absolutely. Look, I don't care about the labels of things can shift, but what matters is the substance. So as long as the substance of a movement or a group of people is good, then it has my support.
That's fair. Speaking of substances,
the word shift.
Have you ever done psychedelics?
Yes, I have. Absolutely.
And how has that shaped who you are as a person today?
It has certainly humbled my view on consciousness. Because
the fuck does that mean?
I think that the range of possible conscious experiences that can be had is so much broader than our day-to-day experience. I think that what most people consider just normalcy is this very fragile state of mind that is held together by pins and needles and these tiny threads. And all it takes is a little bit of certain substances to just launch you into just incomprehensible realms of fractals and crazy shit. So even if you think that or if a person thinks that all of the profundity from that is nonsense, the experience alone, that type of experience is possible and can be had, and is just on the other side of like a small paper tab or a small plant, is mind-blowing, and that has made me appreciate and feel extremely humbled in the grandeur of the universe and the evolutionary track that has produced a brain such as mine that can function at all and not like lose its mind.
Do
It's
you believe
crazy.
in God?
No.
You believe in a higher power?
I think there's probably more than we can see. There's probably more than we can ever see or comprehend.
Well, radio waves would
Sure.
indicate that.
There's
Has your experience on psychedelics opened you to the possibility that the higher mysteries that the Bible and these other religious texts like Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita and all that talk about
I think that
are approximating something truer than just a complete delusion?
There could be, I'm sure there exist higher dimensions. I'm sure that there exists things that are beyond our comprehension. Do I believe in theism? Absolutely not. I think that is absurd beyond articulation that would be the type of universe that we live in.
That's
But
fair. I would describe how you
believe in
look as absurd beyond articulation.
I would agree. That's what I go for.
I do. I mean, look, you I got to be honest with you. You look ridiculous.
This is just how I look, Paul. This is what my hair is.
Take some cues from someone who's much sharper dressed,
Yes.
more of a normie.
Who is wearing a weird fucked up tie over a short sleeve
Shut
shirt
up.
with leaves?
Let's go
on
back to
it?
psychedelics.
Who's got the badass suit, Paul?
I took psychedelics in my life, all legally,
How was your experience?
in all legal circumstances.
Yes, of course.
I believe the reason I have a YouTube channel is because of psychedelics.
Wow. Okay.
I was in college and I took some legal psychedelics.
Something. Yeah. You just held your breath for a long time.
I did go to
let's say.
Amsterdam for spring break one
Oh.
year, so I literally did take legal psychedelics in Amsterdam.
Nice.
And let's go with everywhere I went was
Yep.
legal.
Of course.
And I was in college. I didn't know what I was going to major in. I was kind of like, what the fuck do I want to do with my life? Like, is it business broadly? I was like, I don't know what that means. And I remember being on psychedelics legally. And I had a manila folder with a mechanical pencil. And I would like write notes on just thoughts of stuff down. And the feeling of the mechanical pencil touching the manila folder was like, this is what God felt creating on the seventh day and the sixth day. He did this and that and all that shit. And I wrote something. I forgot what I wrote. I think I wrote something like Order and Chaos down. This is literally a month after having like discovered Jordan Peterson and his conversation with Sam Harris and all that shit. So I was like fresh in my mind. And I wrote something to the effect of my goal is to communicate or something like that. And I did that, and then in college, as part of my fraternity, I took on a role of it was called continuing education, where I would do presentations and stuff to people. I did one on the meaning of life. I might post it, by the way. I have the whole recording from 2018 or whatever. Be an interesting now and then type situation. But then that put me on the path of like, oh, this is where I find meaning, is communicating, right? There's nothing more meaningful than sitting across from dollar store fucking Gandalf.
The great value, Jordan Peterson.
To
be
discussing big ideas.
To want to be a brighter or just a node in the network that has more connections is kind of how I think of that. Like in terms of every human being is connected to other human beings in some way. And most people, we touch a few hundred people's lives maybe in certain ways, but we don't know where those impacts are going to go. But then there's certain people that are extremely bright spots that have like thousands or millions of connections. And that's just what being famous is like you just have more eyeballs on you and more of an opportunity to communicate to people and be an example of somebody that can spread things like love and understanding and a better way to live and try to coexist with each other. And I think that we do have an obligation to do that. If you have a platform, you probably should be, because you have one chance in this tiny, small life to try to make it better for other people. And there's already so much bullshit about life that sucks, and everybody that you know is going to die, or you're going to die. Those are the only two options. And you're going to lose people that you love, and there's going to be terrible illness and all kinds of suffering. So at the very least, we could try to not make each other's lives extra worse through our interactions. And that, I think, is a very, very worthy goal.
And there's no better person that embodies that ethic than Destiny.
I thought you were going to say P.F. Young, but I'll take it. Yes. I think he has been a net good. I do. I'm very appreciative
you know
of
what
the
I do.
platform he's
Look,
built.
he's a D tier enlightened centrist. Maybe C. I think he's C tier. He's a C tier enlightened centrist.
You put him above Dave Rubin, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank
for
God.
Sure. For sure. The Nickelback of centrism.
Yeah.
Yes.
You put him down there with post-Benzo Jordan Peterson, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Dave Rubin's
to my memory.
Post-Benzo. Yeah, I think I'd put Destiny up with Elon Musk. A transhumanist.
Musk.
Yeah, look, I think that's a great message. I have one more topic I want to cover.
Absolutely. I want to check how much time we have. Okay, we're good.
Oh, we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
We'll end early for sure. Atheism.
Okay.
What is going on with all the new atheists that are incredibly... There's a schism, a holy schism in new atheism. Are you familiar with like Alex O'Connor, cosmic skeptic?
Yes.
Rationality Rules, Stephen Woodward?
Yeah.
It's interesting because they're both atheists, and yet they've appeared to diverge utterly in where they're going. Like Alex O'Connor is basically like Jordan Peterson now. He's talking to John Vervaeke, and he's saying things that are literally verbatim, basically what Jordan Peterson said. I always liked Alex O'Connor. I knew he was smart. He's a great guy, very charismatic. So obviously he was going to end up in the enlightened centrist Jordan Peterson camp. Stephen Woodford is like...
Is that rationality rules?
Yeah, rationality rules is like, well, sex isn't really a real thing, and science is just a patriarchal institution. It's like... So what it indicates to me, it's an indication that rationality is purely a tool.
Yes.
This is exactly what Jordan Peterson had said from the beginning.
Yes.
Of science is a religious enterprise, in that there's no such thing as, well, I'm just going to observe the facts as they are, because you have to approach the set of facts with an a priori interpretive structure.
Yes.
So to just say, oh, well, rationality is a subjective process that will lead you to the same conclusion, that never happens. There's no evidence of that. It's never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the new atheists are a good example of, at least the YouTube new atheists are a good example of that split. It's like, well, they're both rationalists. So I would love to see an Alex O'Connor versus Stephen Woodford debate about, trans issues and stuff, and whether or not sex is like a socially constructed category that, is all terminological and all this bullshit that the postmodernists put forward. It's all just, it's an indication to me that it's just, well, Alex O'Connor has these intuitions that lean slightly 1 degree to the left or right, let's say, and Stephen Woodward's intuitions lean 1 degree to the right. And so for a long time, they were along the same track. But at a certain point, like a long enough distance, 1 degree off 1,000 miles from now puts you in a different location entirely, right? That's what rationality is.
Mm.
You're right. It's simply taking the axioms that you start with and rationalizing them.
It's just
right?
a tool. It's just a tool that is totally dependent on your premises.
Right. So
and that's
Jordan
why
Peterson is correct about science being a religious enterprise, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, tell me, based on what I just said, tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, because the way that and I think most people probably, but I'll just use myself, define religion is a belief in some kind of God and some kind of creator.
I don't believe that's how most people.
Okay,
use
well,
that term.
then if you want to talk about like any belief system is religion, which we've talked about this before, where your whole thing is like, well, every belief is a religious belief, everything is religion. Then
Not
okay,
really, no.
If you want to say that,
I wouldn't say every belief is. If I say to you, people treat politics like a religion, you know exactly what I mean. It has nothing to do with higher powers.
Yeah, but you're not calling it a literal religion. You're comparing it to it insofar that they're
functionally equivalent in every possible way, other than the surface noise of one claims to be appealing to a deity, the other appeals to some political
I would
ideology.
say the through line there, the analogy transfer is dogmatism and tribalism, is I would say where they overlap. So whenever you say that they treat it like a religion, I would agree, but I would say
sure
in the aspect of they treat it dogmatically and tribally.
Yes, but
so that's
an ideology that is pursued dogmatically is the axioms are pursued are accepted and protected and acted upon dogmatically. Right? If it's like equality overall,
yes.
Racism is the ultimate thing. We're going to dogmatically pursue. Okay, or the motherland or the fatherland or whatever. It's like you start with an axiom and then you pursue it dogmatically. It's all
What is the
This is my
functionality
point.
in
Well, hold
calling
on.
it all religion?
I'll tell
Let me
you
ask
why.
that.
I'll tell you why. Because it allows us to better diagnose political extremism as what it really is, which is more like religious extremism, which is why I think the whole conversation about policy is sometimes, often, completely irrelevant. And just to highlight when I say, well, yeah, all dogmatic belief systems are religious, essentially, or everyone is religious in that they have a set of fundamental axioms they operate by. Nobody defines religion that way. Okay. If a sports fan kills a fan from another team, literally kills them over their symbol, I would say those fans are more religious than 99.99% of Christians who go to church. And if you say, well, that's not how we define religion, I would say, okay, well, this is exactly my point, is their behavior is functionally religious, and in order to understand their behavior, you have to think about it in religious terms. That symbol of their sports team literally means as much to them as the cross or the Bible does to the religious Christians. And to say, well, we need to think about them differently. It's like, no. Because we need to use the understanding we have about how symbols affect religious people in the traditional sense to then transpose it onto political ideology or other ideologies.
Sure, I think that you can transfer the parts of the analogy that are transferable without calling it a religion.
Why? What's the harm?
I wouldn't.
Let me reverse the question on you.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, you're good.
I've been told I do that a lot.
Only sometimes.
Only sometimes. If I may, let me reverse the question on you. What is the downside of me and Jordan Peterson using religion in the way that each of us do?
The harm is that it equivalates. I can't talk. I've had too much iced tea. It equivocates, or it draws an equivalency between belief systems that are unfalsifiable and belief systems that are. It takes the idea of tribalism, and it says that because everybody's kind of tribalistic and dogmatic, then like every belief system is basically just like a religion. And I would just say, why not just keep the word religion to mean what we conventionally define it as, and then just acknowledge that with any belief system, humans have a tendency towards tribalism and dogmatism, because that's the meaningful part of that I would agree with you is useful to keep in mind, that people are drawn to, worshiping things, and they are drawn to idolizing things and joining a team and turning off their prefrontal cortex whenever they're in a mob of people and doing crazy stuff and like obsessing over things, and it becomes their identity. People are prone to doing that. If you want to call that religion, you can, but I would just say that religion is just one of the subsets or one of the manifestations of that broader human tendency that we do with any belief. And one of the things that we do that with happens to be religion, like Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Scientology. And also we do it with sports, and we do it with politics, and we do it. But there's a broader principle at play here. And it's probably just like a semantic thing, but I think that the danger is that I think that you should abstract out the commonality across these things, refer to that tendency or that behavioral pattern that humans have. I'm doing the Jordan Peterson thing now. You have to talk about the highest structure. No, we should abstract out that commonality and then stack them in a hierarchy of, okay, here is the thing that humans do, and here's the areas that we do it in. And I think what bothers me about you doing it is that you're saying, well, let's take this thing and then make this the higher one, and then call all these other things that word. And I think that it's useful to be articulate and to call things, have just specific words to talk about specific things. So, and I think one time we talked about this, and I was like, well, then what would you change? How would you refer to Christianity? And you were like, well, I would call it like a theistic religion, but I would just call sports like, a religion generically. And I just don't like that wording structure, I guess. But do we agree on the substance of it?
No, everything you said, I disagree with.
Okay, excellent. Perfect.
Not everything you said, but I did not hear any convincing reason why not to use religion in the way that I do. Because the
epistemic validity of a theistic faith is based on unfalsifiable truth claims. And that's my central problem with religion.
There is no belief system that lacks unfalsifiable. Every belief system has unfalsifiable truth claims. There's any statement you make when you break it down to the axioms are ultimately unfalsifiable.
I don't agree with that. I think that you can break things down to a point where you have to start from an axiom.
Let's try this.
You have to start from an axiom.
But you're terribly wrong. Make a moral statement of any kind that is not dependent on a religion.
It's not dependent on a religion. I mean, any moral statement that I can give is going to be based on an axiom of my preferences.
That is unfalsifiable.
That's not what that means. But okay, I get your point. But it's not.
What do you mean that's not what it means?
No, it's not that. So for a thing to be unfalsifiable,
murder is bad.
Yes, I agree. Because
Why is murder bad?
Well,
because God said so eventually.
I'm a moral anti-realist, so I don't believe that moral facts exist, but I do believe that preferences exist. And whenever we say that murder is bad,
it's more like saying boo murder.
Yeah,
that's what Alex O'Connor says.
It's more like
makes sense.
It's more like we're saying that we don't like murder because we don't want to be murdered. We don't want to murder people, so we want to say that murder is bad. And we ask other people, hey, do you agree? Are you not going to kill us? And if they say no, we're going to kill you, then
it's so funny.
Okay,
it's so
we can't coexist. But if they agree, then we get to be friends. So that statement is based on an axiom that is based on a feeling and a value. But for like unfalsifiability generally in nerdy philosophy is reserved for truth claims, where it's like you can't prove or disprove this statement's truth value. But because I'm a moral anti-realist, I don't believe that moral claims have truth values. They're just statements of preference, if that makes sense. Bless you. Get rid of those demons, Paul. You have so many of them inside.
I'm allergic to bullshit. Did you watch the Jordan Peterson Sam Harris debates?
I did.
This is the Jordan Peterson Sam Harris debate, and you're taking the Jordan Peterson side. Is that a fact? Suffering's bad.
I don't think I'm taking the Jordan Peterson side.
To say that suffering is bad, Sam Harris would claim that's a fact.
So I disagree with both of them on that. I think that Sam Harris has.
Of course you do.
Sam Harris.
I wish you were there to correct both of them.
I wish I should have been. I would have spanked both of them quite properly and quite swiftly. I do think. No, I think that Sam Harris believes in objective morality, which I don't. I'm not clear on his meta-ethical position, but I think Sam Harris is a moral realist, which I just find totally indefensible. He believes that moral facts exist independent of human preference, which I don't. But I think that they were both. I side more with Harris in general, but on the topic of morality, neither. But on the topic of truth, I was on Sam Harris's side because I think JP totally fumbled the ball, and he even admitted, I think like last year or 2 years ago, that he was more concerned with winning in that debate than actually listening, and he has since reflected on it and changed his position. I believe he said that to Matt Dillahunty. So even the Lobster King can learn. That's the message here. Hold out and have faith in people, even if you hate them, because eventually they might just come around, but they won't if you're mean to them. So don't be mean to Jordan Peterson. He's had a lot of benzos.
That's fair.
You know,
this has been a phenomenal podcast.
It absolutely has. I'm down to just spitball more if you are.
I was just going to say,
do you have anything else?
I'm looking at controversial rapid fire questions. I think that would actually be fun.
We can totally do that.
Did you have any burning topics in your mind?
Burning? Yeah, I'm sure there are a couple. I should have written more things down.
If I had ChatGPT right now, I don't have it on my phone, but I would say I'm doing a political podcast right now.
What videos have you made recently? You made the immigration one. You made the far right reactionary one. Oh, I also want to clarify my statement from earlier because it is sat on my mind.
I do condemn Hamas. Oh,
yes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Whenever I said, because you were like, oh, it's bad to call conservatives retarded, and I was like, not all of them, like only like a third maybe. I want to say the same thing about the left too, just to clarify here that I would say a solid third of probably most groups of people are probably retarded. And I wouldn't have said that a year ago, but after seeing a lot of the Hamas shit, I am a little bit more, that has certainly made me a bit more skeptical of, the far, because I'm probably like economically far left and, by certain metrics, but that brand of the left who is like, oh, like 10-7 was fucking base, dude. Those people are fucking psychopaths.
Yeah. BLM Chicago, Black Lives Matter.
I don't know.
You agree that Black Lives Matter?
100%.
No. Okay.
I
also agree with that too.
I wore a Jewish Lives Matter shirt in the Ben Shapiro video.
Nice.
You see that?
Nice.
Yeah.
Listen,
I bought that for $15
to be clear,
from Jeff Bezos.
To be clear, nobody loves black people more. I'm also.
All right, Donald Trump. Nobody loves black people more than me.
Nobody loves black people more than I do.
Does.
Listen, nobody loves Jews more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody loves black people more than I do.
I feel the exact same way. Black people and Jews specifically.
Nobody loves libertarians more than I do.
That, you know.
Do you agree that Black Lives Matter, the organization, especially the national level, is a complete fucking scam?
There's a lot of really fucked up shit with them as an organization. And most people on the left would agree that the specific people in charge of, like, I mean, even Vosh has said that, like, those people can have done some crazy, like, money laundering shit. Yeah, for sure. And
I think you're just saying that
happens.
Because you're white and you feel like you can criticize black people.
That's a danger that happens is like, and here's something we could actually talk on real quick, is that it's so hard. Humans are so tribalistic, and we make associations so quickly that it's difficult whenever you have a philosophical or ideological movement, and it gets hijacked, or at least some part of it gets co-opted or hijacked by truly bad faith, crazy fucking people, or like one guy. You start like an organization to push a policy, and then, you know, one person in like that organization turns out they're a pedo. Optically, that would make a lot of people think, oh, well, then anybody that supports that policy of this % of tax is like they support pedophiles. And our brains make these slippery associations so quickly. I saw this person the other day actually say that if you support like the left or like left-wing policies, you support like child sex trafficking. And it was like a prominent person on like a right-wing podcast said this. And it's like, and their argument is like, well, because, you know, there's people on Jeffrey Epstein's list who were Democrats. It's like,
that's almost as dumb as saying all conservatives are artards.
Sure. And which I disagree. Yes.
Tell that to your
not all
your
conservatives are artarded.
Tell that to your gremlin.
Destiny doesn't think that all conservatives are artarded. He was just having he was having a gamer moment. Okay. He's prone to those. He just throws slurs around sometimes. No, but yeah, that's really hard, is to get people to not make these associations with movements. Like the concept behind Black Lives Matter, there was an organization that was started, called themselves Black Lives Matter. Turns out they did a lot of weird money laundering stuff I don't know all the details on, but then it's like that makes the whole thing look bad. And that gives people ammunition to say that like the movement was shitty, but it's like, well, there's a movement is millions of people, and it's an idea. Yeah. So bad people inside of the movement don't, just because a bad person believes something does not reach into the truth value of that belief and change it. You know,
sometimes it can.
I mean, bad people can believe bad things, but it doesn't make it untrue if they're a dick. Dicks can be right sometimes. You know.
Yeah, but.
So
abolishing the police was just a bad idea, no matter what.
Yeah, that particular way of framing that was cringe, because
there was a time not too long ago where if you had said, "Guys, I think abolishing the police sounds like a stupid idea," you would literally be like, "You're a racist."
Yeah, I mean,
that's
listen,
your whiteness talking.
The Twitter leftist types should not be taken seriously.
It's not just Twitter leftists. These are people I knew in my life, very intelligent people.
Did you ask them?
This is partly why I'm so animated about these issues. Because I've seen in my own life intelligent people on the left, on the right, go total ideologically possessed mode.
Yeah.
If you point to the fact that a black officer was shot during the Black Lives Matter riots, you're a racist because you're choosing to focus on the violence. Well, like, fuck you, gaslighting, manipulative freak.
Did you ever get that, your friends who believe that too, or the people that you knew that believe that, to flesh out what they meant? Did they literally just say...
I tried to have a conversation with them. They said they were too busy at the time.
Okay, because I think in general, maybe there are some people that actually thought that we should just abolish police and not have a police force. That is an untenable position. Obviously, I think that the vast majority of people that I ever saw advocate for that, when you ask them to actually articulate it, ended up they backpedal everything.
They did it in Minneapolis.
And they're like, well, we need to reallocate funding for police, which is probably a good idea.
They did it in Minneapolis.
Right.
And it was the highest murder rate ever after that.
Sure, because you
and
have
you
to
and
have
I,
an enforcement
and you and I,
mechanism.
and our fellow whites, our fellow progressive whites. Guess what? Did we suffer the consequences of that stupid fucking idea? Nope.
Mm-hmm.
But, everyone got to post their black square and say, abolish the police. And, oh, well, it turns out it doesn't actually matter if a difference is made. It just needs to look like we care.
Yeah, I don't know the details on the Minneapolis thing, but I will say that obviously I think you have to have an enforcement mechanism for law. There's otherwise there are no laws.
I looked up rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Paper or plastic?
Here's something.
No, rapid fire.
I like paper, but, and this is not going to be rapid. When I was in Europe, then they had paper straws over there. It really fucking pissed me off. I'm going to be honest, because I put them in the coffee, and especially if it's like hot, and then melts. You sip it, and it just fucking,
that's gross.
It sucks up into itself, and you try to pull water out of it, and it cinches up.
All of these suck.
It's pretty nasty. It's pretty bad. Here's something.
Go ahead. We'll wrap up here in a few minutes.
So enlightened centrism, I'm willing to back your brand if I think it is truly enlightened centrism.
Okay.
What are the policy positions that we agree on? Where is our common ground? Because we seem to agree on a lot of economic issues like unions and corporate taxation, and some. Are you familiar with the concept of marginal utility? Like how, like $1 million to a person with like 20 billion is like not shit,
Yeah,
but
you
could give that to these people. So we kind of broadly agree on certain progressive or lefty type economics, right? Like, do you support the concept of universal health care, of some type of universal education, stuff like that?
Yep.
Okay. So like economically, I'd say pretty good. You are pro-choice up to a certain point.
I don't believe in the binary. I don't believe the moment of sperm fertilizes the egg. I think abortion should be allowed up until like 15, 16 weeks.
Okay. So yeah, you're pro-choice to align.
Sure.
So
sounded pretty good so far.
Yeah, I don't know.
Welcome to the team.
Yeah.
We're signed up.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you obviously believe that adults can transition, just not kids.
Yep.
Which we will hash out at a later time.
And I will say, the reason I believe that is because I take it for granted that the literature does say it is effective for adults.
Sure.
I haven't looked at that. I've never looked at a study with adults. Or I have seen them, but I haven't looked into them to the degree that I've looked into the ones with children.
Sure.
If that were to change, if it was the case that the literature with adults is not as solid as I take it for granted to be, then I might change my mind. I don't think it. My understanding, based on people like Abigail Schreier and Ken Zucker, is that it's
pretty solid for adults who qualify. You also believe in climate change, right? You believe that that's a real thing that is happening, and it's
the climate changes.
Sometimes it's man-made, anthropogenic, CO2, exponential.
Are you asking
growth.
if I believe in climate change?
I'm asking if you believe in specific
yes,
anthropogenic
obviously,
CO2 fueled climate change.
The climate changes. Sometimes it's cold.
All right, you
sometimes
centrist
it's hot. Motherfucker.
I knew it.
Sometimes it rains.
We got him, everybody.
Sometimes it snows.
We got Paul. It took a while, but we got him.
No, I do believe in it. Bjorn Lomborg also believes in climate change. I take the Bjorn Lomborg position. It's a problem. It's not going to end humanity.
Yeah, it's not going to end humanity, but
we should move to nuclear.
He understates
in part for
the
energy
problem
independence.
Heavily, I think.
Maybe.
Okay.
All right.
You sound like a solid lefty to me, Paul. So at the very least, a liberal. You sound like you got
enlightened centrist. All right. I'd like to take a few minutes here to. Is this the camera?
Yeah, it's your camera. I think.
All right. I'd like to. While we have a few minutes, I'd like to take this opportunity to read some stand-up material that I have.